All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for joining our open house for the Diversity Specialized Predoctoral to Postdoctoral Advancement in Neuroscience Award. We affectionately call this the D-SPAN Award, F99 K00. We do these open houses about 3 times a year, and we try to focus on kind of different career stages each time. This career stage is really for later stage graduate students considering doing a postdoc, but again, we're going to kind of go over everything in a bit. So if that doesn't apply to you, still hang tight. Just a reminder of some webinar logistics. The captions and live transcript are available. We are recording the webinar and we'll have it up on our website in hopefully within the week. And I'll also share a whole bunch of resources, including this PowerPoint presentation in an email to you after the webinar is over. If you have any kind of general questions on what is presented in the first kind of half hour of this talk, you can put them in the chat, but just know that the point of this is sort of an open house. So we're going to have 10 breakout rooms for you to really meet our NIH staff and answer, they'll be there to answer your questions kind of in those breakout rooms. So save your questions if they're kind of individualized for the end. Oops. Just a brief outline again of the webinar. We'll go over an intro to the program. We'll go over kind of the application components. We'll go over some review considerations, but then again, the last hour of this webinar will really be time for you to meet our NIH staff in breakout rooms. So with that, I'll just quickly present our speakers today, Dr. Michelle Jones-London, Dr. Lauren Ulrich, and Dr. Ashley Van Vier. They are sort of help managing the D-SPAN program overall, and they're going to walk you through the components. So I'll pass it first to Dr. Jones-London.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahimi. And it's so great to see all of these people here today. So I'll start off with going through the goals of D-SPAN, and it really is spanning the pathway of training. We know along every transition point that you make, it's another decision to think about your career. And that often, each time that you do that, there can be a sense of losing sort of that support or feeling like there are transition barriers. And so D-SPAN was created to really create a defined pathway across this critical juncture, going from pre-doc to postdoc. And really with the thought in mind in terms of encouraging and retaining outstanding diverse graduate students who have really demonstrated the ability and the interest in careers as independent neuroscience researchers. It's a really thriving community now with a hallmark of really true intentional mentorship. In terms of how the funding works, it's a dual phase funding. And what that means is that either you can request 1 year or 2 years of support, and you'll get the support as you're completing your PhD dissertation. And that F99 portion must be at a current US institution. The other second phase of it is up to 4 years of support for postdoctoral training, and that's the K00 part, and that's at also any US institution. In terms of the scientific focus, what makes the D-SPAN really special is the fact that it is really applying to neuroscience broadly, meaning that during the F99 and the K00 phase, you must demonstrate an interest in neuroscience and still do that neuroscience in the K00, but you can move back and forth. So for example, during your F99 portion, you could be doing more mental health research, but then when you do your postdoc, you could decide you want to do a research on drug abuse and do more research relevant to NIDA. And so this program allows you that ability to go across many missions of the NIH institutes that are listed on this slide. These participating NIH institutes and centers are institutes that have an interest in neuroscience research. One caveat is that NIDCD, which participates in this program is limited to the brain initiative research areas only. And so this is a wonderful program to think about if you're a neuroscientist, because of the flexibility it gives you. In terms of you, with the PI, once again, you're going to be a graduate student to be able to apply for this from a diverse background, and that definition really is broad in terms of including individuals from nationally underrepresented groups in neuroscience research, persons with disability, those from disadvantaged backgrounds. In terms of the timing, 1 to 2 years left in your PhD at the time of award. And it's really important to note this timing. It's the years that you have left, right? So usually what we see is that this is someone who's in their third or fourth year by the time they're applying. But we also know critical life events happen, things happen, childbirth happens. And so later is okay with justification. We'll give you our contact information. We always tell people, don't self-eliminate, just contact us and have a conversation about your timeline, and we'll help you determine if this is the appropriate program for you. You also must be at the dissertation phase. And that also can be, some schools can have different definitions of what that means. Just reach out and have a conversation with us. This is for US citizens or permanent residents only. And this is a program, not every program is for everybody. And that's what we also say. This is a program that if you're in a clinical or health professional or dual degree program, because of the fact that these phases must be continuous in time, this program will not be a fit for you. Who it is eligible for also is current T32 appointees. And if you are already on an F31, you are still eligible for this given the phases. What it means is that you would just stop the F31 if you receive the F99. And as I've already mentioned from the other side, as you're writing up this application, just think about both of these phases and that both of these phases must have a mission relevance to one of the neuroscience institutes listed. So in terms of the transition, and my colleagues will go into this in more depth, the F99 phase, once again, has to be at least 1 year, no more than 2 years, and except in unusual circumstances, the F99 phase will not be extended. So if the timing doesn't work, it's fine. We'll talk about a lot of other opportunities that we have across NIH institutes for you. But what will happen is if you don't have enough time on the F99, you can't just get a K00. This is a question that we get a lot. So the transition is also not automatic in terms of the program, that you'll be administratively reviewed, the K00 part, and you must submit a K00 application after you've gotten the F99. And to activate that phase, you must be offer and accept a neuroscience-focused postdoctoral research position. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Lauren Ulrich, who will go into the nitty-gritty of the application components.
Thank you, Michelle. Oops, this is a little more sensitive than I thought. So I'll just start with a reminder that the fellowship review criteria framework and parts of the application itself will change starting next year, January 25th, 2025. So the last receipt date for the D-SPAN program with these instructions that we're going to talk about today is the October 8th deadline that's coming up. So if you plan to apply next year, a lot of this will be applicable, but some of the details may change. So be sure to be aware of those changes. So just to start, whenever you're putting together any kind of fellowship or career development award application, we generally recommend this framework to help you think through and communicate your plans. And we always recommend to Start at the end, actually. Like, really think about, what are your career goals? What kind of research do you want to do as an independent investigator at the end of this grant? And from there, you can say, what are the techniques, the skills, the knowledge, the relationships, the mentors? What is everything that you're going to need in order to be successful in that career goal? And some of those things that you will already have mastered in your undergraduate work, your post-bac, your graduate work to date, whereas some of those things you have left to master. And that's what we call the gap. And this whole process is a gap analysis. And the point of this training application, or any training application, is to fill that gap. For the D-SPAN in particular, there's two phases of this. So you also need to communicate what you're learning in each phase. So thinking about, of those skills that you still need, what are you developing during your graduate training, and what do you plan to develop during the K00 phase? And this will be in the research side of things, in terms of research skills, techniques, what kind of data you want to be familiar with, and then on the postdoc side as well. And thinking also about the training plan. So what activities are you going to perform in each of the phases? And then what kind of mentorship do you need? I'll get into each of these pieces. But first, some general guidance. We have a lot of resources on the website, previous webinars, FAQs, etc. So please take advantage of those. We also have a podcast called Building Up the Nerve. Season 2 in particular can be really helpful. We go through the different parts of career development or fellowship application. Carefully read the entire notice of funding opportunity and pay particular attention to the review criteria. Everything you need to know is in there, or in the fellowship instructions for the SF424 application guide. And we know it's a lot, but it all is important and necessary. So be sure to read, annotate. Sometimes I tell people, copy and put it in a different document in the order that makes sense for you, because you need to carefully follow the instructions. The NOFO information takes precedence, unless it explicitly, directs you to the application guide, and then you can use the F31 instructions, because there aren't F99 specific instructions at this time. When it comes to you as an applicant, the application should communicate a few things. So given your prior training record, your goals and your proposed training plan, the letters of reference, your graduate research plan, and the postdoc research direction, is it reasonable to expect that you will be ready to transition to a postdoctoral position in that 1 to 2 year time frame, and then through that F99 phase, will be prepared to successfully implement a strong postdoctoral research project. And then we also need to see a commitment to a neuroscience research career in the future. For the sponsor or the mentor, in the F99 phase, we want to see a mentor that has a strong track record in training and transitioning graduate students to successful postdoc positions. So if your mentor, your primary mentor, is a little more junior, we often recommend that you include a co-sponsor, or even co-sponsors, plural, that have a little more experience in this. And that just generally, it can be good for you as a trainee to have co-sponsors and co-mentors or advisory committees, so that you're not depending solely on one person to be your mentor, and you kind of have a team behind you and looking out for you. Just make sure that you're really clear who's doing what and why these people are included in the application. And then the mentor should articulate in the application a comprehensive, individualized plan to support you, really keeping in mind your individual strengths and the gaps that we talked about earlier, so any gaps in skills. And then the mentor also needs to articulate a commitment to facilitating your transition to the postdoc and describe how they're going to help you do that. And if you have co-mentors, they need to describe how they're going to coordinate mentoring you. Are you going to meet together? If you meet separately, are they going to be talking to each other? Those kinds of things. For the K00 phase, you don't need to identify a mentor ahead of time. But you do need to have a very clear vision of what you're looking for in a mentor, thinking about the science, but also as a mentor, what kinds of mentoring do you need? So really demonstrating that you've thought about, what that postdoc is going to look like. And even the institution, the type of institution that you're interested in going to. So, for example, if you do Alzheimer's research with humans, maybe it's very important for you in your postdoc to go to an institution that has an Alzheimer's research center, so that you have access to the participants that you're going to need. So things like that, or on the other side, it could be things like, that an institution that has a strong postdoctoral community. There's not a right answer, but it's very important that you talk about the why. Why do you want this? What do you want? Why is it important for you? Because of your plans and your long-term goals and the skills that you need to develop. For the specific aims, all the applications must use two specific aims. The first is talking about your dissertation research project thus far, and the second is the postdoctoral research direction. For the first aim, in terms of the significance, you want to give an overview of the dissertation research and clearly state a rationale and hypothesis or hypotheses, going beyond just strict experimental details and providing perspective about the work's expected outcomes and the significance. The approach should be organized into two sections. The first is a progress report, what you've done on the dissertation research project thus far. And then the second part is the work to be completed in that F99 phase, talking about both research and career development milestones for that transition. So when we talk about milestones, how are you going to know when you have accomplished what you set out to accomplish? And please pay close attention to the caveats and alternative approaches. This is often a weakness where people sort of say, oh, well, I think it'll work, and kind of leave it there. So really think about what happens if your hypothesis is not correct, or what happens if you can't get a method to work. There's many things that can go awry in science. So really pay attention to that and explain it clearly in the application. For the second aim, you want to talk about a specific scientific question or observation that you want to investigate in the postdoc and explain the significance and the rationale of this. And the K00 aim, it's challenging for sure. There's sort of a Goldilocks principle at work here where you don't want it to be so broad that the reviewers think, well, they don't really know what they want to do for the postdoc. But you also don't want to be so specific that there's like one single lab in all of the United States that you could do this research. So thinking about, and again, connecting it back to that ultimate career goal that you have of think maybe there's general principles like you want to learn or need to learn circuit manipulation. But there's lots of different techniques within that could give you a little more flexibility when it comes to which lab you ultimately join. And also note that the postdoc doesn't have to be a direct continuation or within scope of the pre-doc F99 phase, but it does need to have some kind of logical connection to your previous research experiences. So thinking about, even if you're changing fields in some way, there's something that you've learned from your previous research experiences, whether it's a perspective that you're bringing or a technique or something that is going to carry through, and you're going to take that to the postdoc and build on that. And that should be very clear. And again, as Michelle said, you have to have relevance to one of the participating Blueprint or BRAIN institutes, centers, or offices. For the approach, again, a general description of how the research will be conducted, thinking about different approaches or methodologies that could be used, anticipated results, some challenges that you might think of and how to address them. And again, broad strokes, but specific enough that it's clear you have some sense of what you want to do for the postdoc. Also thinking about career and professional development skills that you want to acquire. And again, that's plan for identifying the mentor. For the research strategy, as we mentioned earlier, applicants should individually address the significance and approach for each specific aim, and really relating those aims back to your career goals. Thinking about this really as a narrative arc of your career, so a broad bird's eye and comprehensive view of writing this application, and we generally recommend using more of a narrative style. And as Dr. Vantveer will talk about in a few minutes, really think about the review criteria prior to writing, because that's what the reviewers are going to use to evaluate your application. Also think about that the emphasis of the proposal should be on the training plan, the mentors and collaborators who will assist with the training, as well as how this research training is going to prepare you for your future career development. Be very careful about grammatical errors and typos. These can be distracting and can prevent reviewers from fully engaging with your application in the way that you want them to. And we always recommend for any grant that you have someone, at least one person, unfamiliar with your research, proof it for grantsmanship, for ambiguous sentences or statements. I think the hardest thing in writing is to try and step outside of yourself and really understand how the audience is going to read and perceive your writing. And it can be very, very helpful if you ask someone to read as maybe a harsh reviewer and ask them for that honest feedback. In terms of errors that we see, you don't want to or don't need to include unnecessary or irrelevant activities. If it's not clear why you're doing this thing, either make it clear or take it out. We often hear reviewers say that the plan feels generic. So what does this mean? It's sometimes, even if you feel like the plan is tailored to yourself, the reasons why you have included things doesn't come through in the application. And it can feel like a laundry list of activities. It's like, yeah, this sounds good, I guess, but it's not like, why are you doing this instead of all the other different things that you could be doing? So you always need to include that why you are doing them, and how they will advance you towards your ultimate goal. Another common error is when the mentor and the mentee sections don't match up. So the mentee talks about how they want to get teaching experience, and the mentor doesn't mention teaching anywhere in the statement. And then reviewers start to wonder, well, are they talking to each other? Does the mentor know that the mentee wants to do teaching? And then doubts start to creep in. Definitely, we recommend getting advice from people with experience in DSPAN or other NIH fellowship applications, but we highly recommend that you don't just copy a training plan from other successful applications. Each person has a different background, they're pursuing different goals, and it's very helpful if these applications are written in your voice and not someone else's. I have definitely seen applications where one person wrote in a certain format, it was incredibly compelling, and then somebody else took that format and they didn't understand what made it compelling. And they tried to use that format and it fell flat. So I think, again, coming back to that why and really articulating your goals and why you're trying to do the activities that you're doing. And finally, I will just put in a plug for, please, if you plan to apply to DSPAN, submit a letter of intent. They're due 30 days ahead of the due date. They're not required, so you don't have to, but it helps us plan review. And I will also note that more than one person is allowed to apply from a given institution at a given round. There are some F99 K00s at NIH that don't allow that, but for DSPAN, there are no restrictions in that way. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ashley Vantveer to talk about review.
Thanks. So I'm going to wrap it up here with just some comments on the review considerations. Again, though, just another reminder that the fellowship review criteria, framework, and application are going to change starting in January. So again, the last receipt date with these review criteria is going to be October 8th, 2024. So similar to the instructions and what you're putting in the application, the way that it's being reviewed will also adjust some starting in January. Currently, after you have your draft, you want to go through what you have written against the scored review criteria. It's clearly outlined in the notice of funding opportunity exactly how the reviewers are going to be assessing your application. It's section 5 of the announcement. And there are 5 review criteria that are being assessed. Applicant, sponsors, collaborators, and consultants, research training plan, training potential, development plan, and the institutional environment and commitment to training. Each of these gets its own score and critiques that you'll see in the summary statement, as well as the overall impact score of the application. So I won't go into this each review criteria. For each one, there are several bullets of questions that the reviewers will ask themselves while looking through your application, but just an idea of, so for applicant, you know, one of the things they're looking for is your significant contribution to the originality of the research that you're proposing, whether the sponsor has the appropriate expertise to guide you in the activities that you've planned. For the research training plan, how you're addressing rigor in the work you're proposing. For the training potential, you know, whether the plan is taking advantage of your strengths, but also addressing gaps in needed skills, as Lauren outlined in her section. And for the institutional environment, whether they have the appropriate resources available for you to conduct the work. So this is just a highlight of some of them, but definitely important for you to read through section 5 of the announcement and make sure that you're hitting all of the points that the reviewers will be assessing. Another piece of the application that you'll put in is the PHS submission form. You don't need to fill out an assignment request form or indicate a specific institute or center IC that the application would be assigned to, or a study section, because all of the DSPAN applications are reviewed in a single study section and all are initially assigned to NINDS. So this panel will have a diverse neuroscience expertise on it that would be appropriate to evaluate any application that's coming in to this announcement, given the neuroscience focus here. So this attachment is available, but you don't need to fill it out. There's also the opportunity after you submit your application to put in what is called post-submission materials. So these are due no later than 30 calendar days prior to the scheduled peer review meeting, and you submit them to the scientific review officer. There's very specific allowable materials, which are then added to your application package, and the reviewers have this additional information when they're evaluating your application. So these include news of an article that's been accepted for publication since you submitted, if your sponsor obtains new funding that you want to include, a change in the mentor or other senior or key persons that are in the original application that would affect the plans that you're putting together. So for instance, if you had a co-mentor that went to industry and they would no longer be available to be your co-mentor, you can have a plan to change who your co-mentor would be to address that potential issue. Biographical sketches then would be to go with this change. So the new mentor or person added to your plan could provide their biographical sketch, and then a letter of support or collaboration due to the hiring, replacement, or loss of an investigator. It's really limited to that. You can't, change what you've written, update experiments, add new preliminary data. But if you have questions about this, once you have a scientific review officer assigned, you can follow up with them about what is allowable and the process for submitting that information. And so just to wrap up, we talked obviously here specifically about DSPAN F99 K00, but there are many other opportunities for funding through NIH at this career stage and your next career stage. Some of them include the NINDS specific F32 for postdoctoral training, or the parent, what we call parent F32, which is supported by many institutes across NIH for postdoctoral training. The general or diversity-focused NIH F31 that supports graduate research training. There are diversity supplements that are available across all career stages, from high school to faculty level. Some institutes support an R36, which is for dissertation phase research, so the final 1 or 2 years of your graduate training. So similar phase as DSPAN, but it doesn't provide the postdoc support phase. And then other institutes also support different F99 K00 programs that you can find more information about at our next phase, which is the breakout rooms. So there's going to be several rooms available for you to join, and you can hop around to multiple rooms, so don't feel stuck in one room. Like if you want to first talk a little bit about DSPAN questions and then move on to joining the room for, say, NIMH, where I will be, the National Institute of Mental Health. If you're doing mental health relevant research, I could tell you about all of the funding opportunities that we support. So there will be 2 rooms for DSPAN questions. There will be a room for the NINDS postdoc F32, for general questions on the F31 and diversity F31 for graduate training. And then there are many representatives from NIH institutes that can talk specifically about their specific funding opportunities. So depending on the research you're doing, browse around for these. I think either way, even if you're applying for DSPAN, it's worth thinking about what your next steps will be, or just getting in contact with a program officer at the institute that will be your future research home. And that also includes the BRAIN initiative. If anyone is doing fundamental neuroscience research as well, there are some opportunities through that. And hopefully people know what some of these acronyms but actually I think I might look and see if I have the link. I'm going to put the link into the codes in case someone wants to make sure like they know exactly what NINDS stands for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Van Veer. I also put in, I realized that people might not know these acronyms. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, great. We had the same thought at the same time.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. All right. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. So this really ends the recorded portion of our presentation. I'm going to stop the recording now. The breakout rooms are not open yet, so don't worry if you don't see them. I'm just going to pause the recording. All right.